Is the BP oil spill a fulfillment of Revelation 8, verse 11? This is part 2 of dealing with prophetic speculation in our day. In the last segment, I made the point that if you're going to understand the book of Revelation, you have to read it against the backdrop of the Old Testament, and you also have to understand the subject matter and the timing as to when these events were to take place. The book of Revelation isn't describing events in the distant future. It's describing events leading up to and including the destruction of Jerusalem in AD 70, the time text of Revelation chapter 1, verse 1, Revelation 1, verse 3, Revelation chapter 22, verse 7, Revelation chapter 22, verse 10, tells us that the events being described in the book of Revelation were soon to happen. The time is near. These things must shortly take place. And also you need to deal with the context. Revelation chapter 8, the context here is very important. Since stars fall from heaven, I don't know what the oil spill has to do with a star, other than the fact that our prophecy friends want to maintain that. Let's see if I can pull this up here. This looks like a star, and supposedly this looks like the wormwood flower. This doesn't look like a star to me. It does look like a flower. If you're going to deal with an oil company that's with a star, it would be Texaco. Now, Texaco is the company that has the symbol of a star, and Texaco isn't in the Gulf, it's BP. So you can make the Bible say anything if you have enough imagination. But what we have to do is allow the Bible to speak for itself. And so what about this idea of stars falling? We already saw where wormwood is really something that happens to Israel. It's the bitterness of judgment that comes upon Israel. And we saw in the last segment that these passages, Deuteronomy 29:18, Jeremiah 9:15, Jeremiah 23:15, wormwood is God's way of saying to Israel, because of your disobedience, you're going to drink the bitterness of wormwood. You're going to come under judgment. God does the same thing in the book of Revelation. He takes the wormwood allusion and applies it to Israel of the first century. And they're going to have to drink the bitterness of all of this. And then we begin to see that there is this relationship between Old Testament Babylon and New Testament Israel. New Testament Israel is, in fact, the new Babylon. It has the same traits of Babylon, and all of this is being given and being foisted upon Israel. And this is why you find in Matthew chapter 24 about the sun will go dark, the moon will go dark, and the stars will fall from heaven. That language is taken directly from Isaiah chapter 13, and it was applied to Babylon. Now we see it being applied to Israel in the New Testament. And sure enough, when you get to Revelation chapter 8, this idea of this star falling, which is a symbol of judgment, and you see this in the use of Isaiah chapter 14, in the depiction of the fall of Babylon. How you have fallen from heaven, O star of the morning, son of the dawn. You have been cut down to the earth. You have weakened the nations. But you said in your heart, I will ascend to heaven, and I will raise my throne above the stars of God, and I will sit on the mount of assembly in the recesses of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will make myself like the Most High. Nevertheless, you will be thrust down to Sheol, to the recesses of the pit. Now, no real star fell. This was a depiction of Babylon. And if you go back to Daniel chapter 4, you can see in Daniel chapter 4 that this is exactly what happened to Nebuchadnezzar. Rulers are depicted as stars in Scripture. You go back to the book of Judges, it says the stars fought from heaven. Well, this is a depiction of rulers coming together and fighting. And sure enough, this is exactly how Nebuchadnezzar is described. All this happened to Nebuchadnezzar the king. 12 months later, he was walking on the roof of the royal palace of Babylon. The king reflected and said, "Is this not Babylon the Great, which I myself have built as a royal residence by the might of my power and by the glory of my majesty?" While the word was in the king's mouth, a voice came from heaven saying, "King Nebuchadnezzar, to you it is declared, sovereignty has been removed from you. You will be driven away from mankind, and your dwelling place will be with the beasts of the field. You will be given grass to eat like cattle," etc., etc., etc. And so you want to depict a nation falling from its lofty heights. You describe it as sun, moon, and stars going dark, and also stars falling. And so we begin to see here in Isaiah chapter 14 a depiction of what's going to happen to Babylon as a star falling. And you get into the book of Revelation, and when you start seeing stars falling, you're talking about judgment upon Israel, because Israel is all that Old Testament imagery of all the enemies of Israel are now being heaped upon Israel in the first century, because they had in fact crucified the Lord of glory. And the name of this fallen star is wormwood, term used in the law and the prophets to warn Israel of its destruction as a punishment for apostasy. And we saw that with the Deuteronomy 29:18, the Jeremiah 9:15, and the Jeremiah 23:15. And so what you're finding here in Revelation chapter 8 isn't anything to do with BP, oil spills. It has to do with a covenantal judgment upon Israel. Again, by combining these Old Testament allusions, St. John makes this point. Israel is apostate and has become an Egypt. Jerusalem has become a Babylon, and the covenant breakers will be destroyed as surely as Egypt and Babylon were destroyed. And this is what took place with the destruction of Israel in AD 70, when the Roman armies came in and destroyed the temple, destroyed the sanctuary, destroyed the city. Josephus describes there's literally blood running in the streets. Josephus puts the number of Jews being killed around 1 million. That may be an exaggeration. 50 or so thousand were taken off into captivity. That's what's being described in the book of Revelation. It's not describing current environmental problems today and so forth. It is describing events of that era that were said to happen soon and so forth. Don't be put off by the apocalyptic language, because that apocalyptic language is used in the Old Testament over and over and over again to describe judgment. It is judgment language, and I've gone over these verses in the past. You look in a lot of these passages, and Micah is a good example of this. In the book of Micah, first chapter, it says, "And behold, the Lord is coming forth from his place. He will come down and tread on the high places of the earth. The mountains will melt under him, and the valleys will be split like wax before the fire, like water poured down a steep place. And all this is for the rebellion of Jacob and for the sins of the house of Israel." And so this type of apocalyptic language isn't unusual in the Old Testament, and therefore it's not unusual in the book of Revelation. The book of Revelation is very, just draws from the Old Testament. You see this in the book of Zephaniah as well, Zephaniah chapter 1, verse 18. "Neither their silver nor their gold will be able to deliver them. On the day of the Lord's wrath, all the earth will be devoured in the fire of his jealousy, for he will make a complete end, indeed a terrifying one, of all the inhabitants of the earth." And yet you read the rest of Zephaniah, it isn't the end of the earth, but that type of language is used throughout the Old Testament. It is apocalyptic language. It is the height of hyperbole, and the same thing is used in the New Testament, especially in the book of Revelation. So don't be fooled by people who pull a verse here or there out of context and try to make it fit a modern day context. Read the text of Scripture against its Old Testament background, especially in the book of Revelation. Pay close attention to the time text in the first book of Revelation, the first chapter of Revelation, and the last chapter of Revelation. The BP oil spill has nothing to do with Bible prophecy as it is depicted in the book of Revelation.
American Vision is proud to present this year's Worldview Super Conference, July 21st through 24th at North Metro Church, Marietta, Georgia. For more information, visit conference.americanvision.org. That's conference.americanvision.org.